Now, the Red Skull, in later times, he would take on the identity of a man by the name of Del Rusk. And pretty much he would begin to make his way into the world of American politics. Now, I need to turn around and click us back not 20 years, but now 60 years ago. Now, taking you back, Cap and Bucky, they get caught in the explosion. Both get lost over the North Sea. Cap survives. Bucky, question mark. It so seems after the war, the Soviets, Bucky's body was discovered in the North Sea by a Soviet sub. They then turned around and fished Bucky out, and they would take him back to Russia, and they would keep him under suspended animation for a number of years. That was until the post-Soviet era, when the country became Russia once again, and they were under a new parliament. Now, with these new scientists, they were able to release Bucky from suspended animation. And being that he got one of his arms torn off in that explosion, they was able to refit him with a cybernetic arm. But he wouldn't be that cheerful kid that we knew 60 years ago. Oh, no. This one right here, right, he would be programmed as a hired assassin for the Russians. And his name was the Winter Soldier. Now, meanwhile, back in the States, Jack Monroe, he loses sight somehow. That cure, it didn't last long on him, and he went totally crazy and ballistic again. This time, he would kidnap a crack mother's baby. He would take this child, which was a girl, and he would rename this child Bucky. And he would assume her as his daughter. After this, pretty much Monroe would turn around and he would continue on, just in a life of crime, nothing leading anywhere. The Winter Soldier would eventually come to the States. He would find Monroe. And before Monroe could turn around and really, really commit any more misery, he put Monroe out of his misery and he assassinated him. Now, as for Cap, in the later years, we're talking about pretty much like in the mid to late 90s, Cap would move to Red Hook out in Brooklyn. And with so many people knowing about, his whereabouts now and the fact that he was back in the loop once again, Cap wanted to turn around and set the record straight because everybody knew that there were several other people as Captain America. So Rogers would then turn around and go public with the identity, letting everybody know that he is the one, the only, and the original Captain America. Now, as far as as far as anything after that, we're going into the post 9/11 years, all right. And Del Rusk, he gets nominated as a U.S. Secretary of State. Now, if we're talking about the 9/11 years, we know that was a critical time in history. And Cap pretty much was looming through a whole bunch of conspiracy theories, and he wasn't able to. He found himself having a hard time trying to convince himself as well as anybody in the government that Rusk would have any connections with a rash of terrorist bombings on U.S. soil. Before any of this can be confirmed, though, and brought to the panel, Rusk would be assassinated by the Winter Soldier. Now, elsewhere in the United States, a battle between hero and villains erupts, destroying a city block. On that city block was a school full of children. The government, seeing this as a backlash, they automatically deemed that every last metahuman and superhero was a walking and living weapon of mass destruction. And a bill was passed for the Superhero Registration Act. Now, the Superhero Registration Act pretty much works on a faction that fears the eroding, the eroding civil rights of everyone within the United States. Captain America, he currently right now leads in opposition, right, opposed to the Superhero Registration Act. And right now, even as we speak, a civil war between anti and pro heroes is now in effect, and it has erupted into American society. The government, of course, you know they got a role in this. In fact, they're in the very middle of it. They're recruiting and hiring a whole bunch of assassins, even freelance assassins like Frank Castle, also known as the Punisher, to kill heroes like Captain America.